This way they know that the names are recited.
So that they turned in the Zoom. That's ridiculous. Hashem has them all
Learning
recorded.
Hashem does. It's the rest of the Olam. It's the leading sponsors. Year of Learning, Martin Lipman family in memory of his wife, Malka Chana, Bat Pinchas, friends of Herb Jeremiah, Tzvi Ben Zev, friends of Sam Coleman, Shmuel Ben Yaakov, friends of Gideon Lazinski, Mordechai Shlomo Ben Meir, Bella and David Adler in memory of her father, Ayahu Ben Yosef Cohen. Those who were inspired by our Rebbetzin in Emerita, Sheila Shapiro, Sarah Esther Mankabad, Meshulam Yisachar, Gail and Leslie Kaplan in memory of their parents, Moshe Sprinzer, Bad Yosef Chaim Bechava, Hanan Ben Moshe Eliezer Vachana, Pesha Bat Shmuel Yitzchak Halevi V'Tzipora, Yusuf Ben Yoam Moshe Cohen Vachana, Rexford Friends of Gladys Sherman, Guta Bud Meir, Michael Klein and Friends of Judah Klein, Yehuda Tzvi Ben Klein, Marsha Braun in memory of her husband, Rabbi Yerachmiel Ben Shmuel, friends and family of Arthur Ritholtz, Mordechai Yudel Ben Baruch Leib HaKohen, friends and family of Siggy Bessler, Shalom Shraga Ben Dov, a month of learning by Charlie Gelfenstein in memory of his father, Meir Ben Yaakov, Ruvain and Susan Podolsky, in memory of his mother, Freda Schweiger Fiver, B. Pizer, in memory of her sister, Rivka Bat Avram Michal Halevi, Michael and Judith Koretsky, in memory of his brother, Avram Ben Gershon. Okay, today we also have a day of learning. Today is the 12th, by Stephen and Nina Levine, in memory of his father, Label Bereb Yisrael Halevi. Shem is heavenly, crank Rafir Vati Shir Shem Latria, Open Israel Big Ben Shir.
Oh my. Let's see where we are. We are. We're at the bottom of Lamates Amid Bays. Yeah.
Rabbi Yehuda Saba.
No, 1 second.
No, he was before that.
No, I think 1 second.
Rabbi Yehuda Saba.
No, we did a bio. We explained the bio, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're at the words Amalei Rabacha Bar Abaya. That's what you got? Amalei Rabacha Bar Abaya. So let me just summarize so we'll understand. We have an enigmatic brisa. What happened? Rabbi Yaakov says when an incompetence ox gores, you pay half damages. So what does that all mean? So we had a machlokas between Rava and Abaya. Rava said that law comes from the intersection of Rabbi Yaakov agreeing about 3 different principles with Rabbi Yehuda, that we set up an apotropos for half damage, that we set up apotropos for half damages, that the tzad tamas remains, and that the watching of an unwatched ox is more unwarned ox is more severe than the guarding of a warned ox. That was the machloket. So therefore, according to Rava, the payment was for the half damages. According to Abaya, Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yehuda actually disagree about whether we set up an apotropos for half damages, and therefore the case was a muad, and he wasn't paying for the tom. He was paying for the tom half because that was out because we don't collect for it, but he paid for the muad half. Now the Gemara wants to just challenge and understand why Rava said what he said. The truth is, we'll see that he could have also set up the same brisa about a tom and not about a muad. That's number one. And then we'll have also an alternative explanation of the opinions of Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov. Okay. It makes sense according to Abaya, the Amar who said what? Pligi, who said that Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yehuda are arguing like we said. So I understand why we set up the brisa that it was talking about a warned ox. Okay. Because we can't say that it's an unwarned ox, because according to Abaya, Rabbi Yaakov holds that you don't set up an apotropos. So I understand it had to be a tom one. It had to be a muad one. Sorry. The Rava, but according to Rava, but according to Rava, who says what both Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Yehuda agree that we do set up an apotropos, that we do set up an apotropos to collect half the damages from an incompetent ox. Once he set up by a muad, he could have easily nukma batam. He could also set up as a tom. What would be the case? It was what would be the reason that you pay half damages? Either Rabbi Yehuda, whether because Rabbi Yaakov holds like Rabbi Yehuda, like we said, that by a tom you need, and you need to have excellent watching, and it was a case of regular watching, like we learned yesterday. He made a normal watching, a lesser watching, which is what, that the door would stand up to a regular wind, but not an excellent watching that it would stand up to an uncommon wind. Either Rav ben Yaakov, or he could have even agreed with Rav ben Yaakov. The law of the shmir klal, it could have been a case where what, there was no shmir at all. He didn't watch it, and what the Tanya, because Rav Yaakov holds what Omer echatam echad muad shmir shmir pekusa b'turin. He holds what that and by that whether a tam or a muad, even a tam, it's good enough to do a standard watching, a regular watching, which will stand up to a regular wind. Okay, but Kamash and the Chiddush would be Rabbi Yaakov. Rabbi Yaakov would teach me the Mamidin Lahanat Petrovs and says Latam Ligvos Megufam. And let us know that we do take an apotropos for the tam ox of an incompetent. Okay. So Ravina said back to Rav Acha, I'll tell you why. This is why Rabba said it. Really, Rabba holds, like we said, that Rabbi Yaakov, Rabbi Yehuda didn't argue, like we said, and therefore he really wanted to set it up. They were completely in agreement, and he wanted to set it up in a way where there would be more chidushim rather than less. Why? By setting it up, you're right, he could have set up as a tam, but by setting it up as a muad, how did this pay time? He was able to add two chidushim. Okay, what is that? What? One, that we're able to set up an apotropos, an overseer, to collect the half damages from the ox of an incompetent, but that's the same. Of an incompetent, and also what that he holds the one that if that by a muad it's sufficient to have what, to have a normal watching and not an excellent watching. Ravina Maria says Bechlal, there is a different argument between the Rabbi Yehuda and we said that Rabba said there's no argument. Abai said there's an argument. Ravino says yes, but there's an argument about something else entirely. There is an argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yaakov about whether what we debated before in the Mishnah, the Sumchas and the Chachamim, whether when you change ownership, whether that erases a chazaka of being a warnash. Kagon to Habimud. So the case was where what? The real case is where the ox was a worn ox when it was with the apotropos. The deaf mute became cured, and also the imbecile became sane. The Higdil Katan or the minor grew up. All of them became competent. So now it's going from a case of going back to the domain of the incompetent. Competence is competence. So it's leaving, so to speak, the domain of the overseer to them. Yehuda hold, like we said, like the rabbis, that it stays the way it was. It doesn't make a difference. Maybe Yaakov says no, since it went back. It went back to the incompetence. We became competent. We erased the status quo of what of being one. Okay, then we learned a very interesting point. There's a lot of material today. Apotropos, okay, mishalmim min aliyah. This is just a code word. It really just means what? That if the overseer is overseeing an ox that has been worn, and they're going to have to pay full damages. But if that worn ox that they were overseeing killed somebody, they don't pay the atonement money. Now, I want to explain something. There's 2 points about atonement money, and at this point, the Gemara is going to think that they're the same. In a minute, the Gemara is going to say they're not the same. What is it that we think is the same? Here, we have one argument. Is the atonement money paid, is it the price of the damager, or is it the price of the damagee? Is it the mazik's price or the nizak's price? The second question is atonement money really, okay, is it really to atone? What I translate as atonement money, but really it's some kind of a buying out. Is it atonement, or is it really just a monetary payment? So right now we think that they're the same. Whoever thinks that it's really there to machaper, it's really there to atone for his wrongdoing, and he should really be killed, so to speak. He should really be killed. So he should really be killed. So, but we don't kill him. Rather, what we don't kill him. He pays the money. So the money is really what? Atonement for the person who did the damage. So obviously it'll obviously go together with, and whose price are you going to pay? The guy who did the killing. Okay. The other way we say no. We say that since if we hold it's really a monetary payment, it's just really paying for the damage done to the deceased. We're literally paying the price of the deceased to the descendants. So that we can say, oh, what that opinion holds, it's a monetary payment. So we're assuming that those 2 arguments coincide. Whoever holds it's a monetary payment holds that we evaluate the damagee, the nizak, and whoever holds it, it's an atonement payment, holds that we evaluate the damager, the mazik. That's what we hold. The Gemara is going to correct us in 1 minute.
Excuse me, pardon my ignorance. Who gets the kofar?
The kids from the inheritors of the worst of the deceased. Yeah. Okay. So now, good. So right now we're assuming that those two arguments go together, but now we're going to see in a minute. In 1 second, we're going to uproot that assumption. So again, we learned that the apotropos they have to pay full damages. No, they really pay full damages, but they don't pay kofar. Man Tana, who is the one who holds kufra kapara, that really this payment of kofar is really an atonement payment, v'yasmi la b'nei kapara dinu, and therefore that's the reasoning of the brisa. Since kids they're not liable for any punishment of killing. Okay, therefore so they don't pay it. Okay,
you're talking about the children who own the ox.
Yes, yeah, the incompetence. Okay, Amar Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda says, Rabbi Shmuel b'noshe Rechem Rebroki. It's Reb and Rebab. How do we know? Who holds that one holds that it's kapara? How do we know? Because we're going to now watch. Because we're going to assume that whoever says that we evaluate the damager believes that it's atonement. That's atonement. The Tanya, because we learned. But Nosan Pidyon Nafsha, he has to give a redemption of his soul. No, it's something in place of his soul. Okay, so we said what the main nizak. The first opinion, what that's the price of the one who was killed, of the damagee. Okay, Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher Yochanan Broka says no. He says He says no. He says the main mazik. It's really the price of what of the person who did the killing. The ox, the one who did the killing, the ox, the owner of the ox. So if they're arguing about whether it's the price of the damagee or the damager, must be what? The Rabbanan must be the rabbis who hold that it's the price of the damagee. Sabra Kupra Mamoni. They must hold what? It's a monetary payment. Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher Yochanan Broka Sabar Kupra Kapara. He and Rabbi Shmuel has to hold what? It must be that it's really in place of his death penalty, and it's atoning for him, and he's paying off. And therefore, it's his price. And therefore, what? Therefore, it must be that our brisa is who? Must be that our brisa is Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Shmuel. Why? Because he's the one who holds that it's really paying off. It's coming in place of the death penalty for the damager. Rav Papi says, no, you don't have to make that assumption. Don't assume that the two arguments are coincident or coincide. They don't. The Kuli al Makufa Kapari, it's not true. Everybody in the world holds it's atoning for what should have been a death penalty for the owner of the ox. Well, how could anybody say that it's the price of the damagee? Well, this is the argument. Rabbanan Sabre, the rabbis who say what? That it's the price of the one who was damaged. They hold the nizak shaiminan because that's how we atone for the person who did the damage. How does he atone? By paying off the price of the price of the guy, the life that he took away, at least in physical terms. Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher Yochanan Broka Sabar b'damazik shamin. He says no. If you're going to do atone for himself, he has to do it from himself. Now, my time of the Rabbanan. What's the reason of Rabbanan? I'll tell you why. Because they have psukim to back them up. It's an argument whether this is a true Gezeir Shava or not, but we'll learn it that way for the moment. We have a word bridge. Nemar Shisa Lamata. It talks about what? Being assessed. What the judges place upon the person. Remember, when the pregnant woman was damaged and the damager had to pay the price of the damage to the pregnant woman, and the loss of babies, okay, so he has to pay the price of the babies to the husband. Okay, so it says there, Shisa. It talks about what the judges will assess him that he has to pay. V'nemra Shisa, and it's also talking about what? Lamala. Also in our case here, when it comes to paying off for his ox killing somebody, his muad ox killing somebody, also talking about what? Assessing him. Mala halam b'denizak. So just like over there in the other place, when it came to paying for the babies, it was what? What was the price you're paying for the babies, for the damager, for the damagee? What's the price of Afghan? So here too also, but the Nizak, we use the word bridge to take the law from there to here, even though people argue what I just said, but I'm saying it simply. So therefore what? So also over here it has to be what? The price of the damagee. Rabbi Shmuel ben Osher Yochanan Broka, somebody says no. The Nosan Pidyon Nafshik, it says what? He has to give the redemption of his soul. Who's the his? What's the antecedent of the pronoun? It's got to be the damage. Okay, that is what? That's the damager. For Rabbanan. That's such a power. No, what? This is a kushya. That's such a powerful point. It says he shall give for his soul. It's obviously the damager. New Rabbanan. How do the rabbis get out of that? How can they possibly countenance that verse and still say that it's the damagee? Where it says in, they said, yeah, no, you're right. Pidyon nafshak siv. Yes, it is the redemption of the damager's soul. But but when would you evaluate it? But he's actually the redemption of his soul is to pay for what he took away, which is the other guy. Yeah, very important. Okay, it's a beautiful point. And also in general, you'll see we haven't seen yet, but throughout the Talmud, it's my humble opinion. All the places it says Rabbanan, Rabbi Shmuel, etc. Those are always akushya. It's not just saying, oh, what do they say? No, they're not asking a question. They're attacking the previous opinion. What you said is so strong for opinion A, it leaves no room for opinion B. You're saying, Rabbanan, how could the way you answered so good, you raised the kasha. Your teretz is too strong. If you defend one side too strongly, you are what? You are saying something silly for the other side. So we attack you. It's very straight. Too strong a defense becomes what? Becomes a weakness. Okay, because you didn't leave room for the other side. Okay. Mishabachle. Rob, now this is a famous case, and it leads to very incredibly interesting points. Mishabachle Rav of Nachman. Rav used to praise two Rav Nachman used to praise. Okay, he used to tell the praise of Rachab Yaakov to Rav Nachman. So therefore, what the Adam Gadol that Rav Yaakov was a very great rabbi, very great scholar. Amalei, so Rav Nachman said to Rav, okay, l'kashiyavo, okay, liyadach. When he comes to you, he says, "Hey, liyadach, bring it to me." No, once upon a time, it really happened. So when Rachab Yaakov finally came to Rav Nachman by through the hand of Rava, Amalei, so Rav Nachman said to him to see how great, to test how great Rav is. Why ask me something. He's going to see from what he asked. He's going to see. Oh, you're such a big scholar. Ask me something. Let's see what you have. Let's see what you can ask. So he said to him. He says, "Boy, when I was 20 years old, Rav Nosson Kopshis, one of the great scholars of Yerushalayim, came to give a shiur. So we were all. He was a very illustrious rabbi. We were kids, So he gives a wonderful shiur. So we're all sitting silently. So he looks up. He says, "Okay." He says, "No." "Yeah, what do you think?" And he says, "Very nice." He says, "Very nice. What's very nice?" He says, "Ask me a kasha." He says, "Ask me." That's what kind of answer? What kind of answer? Very nice. Ask me something. Attack me. Say something. So all of a sudden, we start to think of everything we can think of. We were intimidated. He was a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful person. Okay, okay. So he says, "Ask me something." So Rabbi Yaakov asked him this. He said, "Sure, stay true, tough him. What do we do?" Now, look, there's no question when it comes to damages. There's no question. If two partners on the ox and the ox did damage, they share nothing to talk about. But here's the problem. What about when the ox kills? Okay, and it's a muad ox that kills, and then what's going to happen with the atonement? With the atonement. Okay, now, okay, so he says, he said he asked this question. If there's an ox that belongs to two partners, how are they going to pay the atonement? High kofer. Okay, the high kofer. Does each one pay? Do he pay? He pays kofer and he pays kofer. Each one pays a full value. Okay, it can't be. He says that can't be. Why? Kofer because the Torah said one. The Torah said pay kofer, not two. Lo shnei kofer, and not two atonements. High chetzi kofer. This one will pay half, and that will pay half. Okay, and so in the end, the descendants will get a whole one. You can't be what kofer shalom one of the Torah said pay a kofer, a complete kofer. The Torah never commanded any pay below chatzi kofer. Didn't command to pay half a kofer. So he says what? So therefore I ask you from either side. I have a kasha because it makes no sense. So while Rav Nachman, was sitting, that was a good question. He's sitting and thinking, what's the answer? Amalei says, you know what? He says, I'm going to ask you another question. Now stay tuned. It's going to take a while to get the question. He says, we learn, the rule is that, if Erchen is a person says, I'm going to give my value. These are set values in the Torah. These are not individual. The Erchen is what? This person, there's set values, man, woman, this. Yeah, there's set values. So people who have donated a set value of a person to the temple, what the Gabaim come and they take it from them. They come and collect. Okay, we'll see in a second. We'll see in a second why. Okay, they come and force them to pay. But when somebody's obligated to bring a sacrifice of a chatas, of an ashram, a sin offering, the temple doesn't come to collect, to collect against their will. Chayvi Kofri. Okay, now, okay. Now, we're going to see it in a second. Chayvi Kofri Mai. Now, what happens when a person is obligated to pay his atonement for his ox having killed somebody? It says, do we say came in the kapara? Since it's atonement, it'll be just like the sacrifices in the temple. The temple doesn't have to collect sacrifices. Why? Because the person has to atone for himself. He'll be happy to pay. The temple doesn't have to run after him. It's his own benefit. So the same thing over here. So since the payment for the killing the guy is to atone for the owner, we don't have to force him to pay. He's going to pay it himself. Okay. He's going to consider it very severe, and we're not okay. We don't have to collect against as well. Odilma, perhaps on the other side. Came into the Chabri de Miyasila, since it is a little different. You know when you don't have to collect from a guy because he's going to pay the temple. Temples, he's very afraid of the temple. It's another story. But here, even though it's an atonement, but he's paying a person came in the Chabri de Miyasila, he has to pay the person Mamonu. In that respect, even though it's atonement, but it's still kind of monetary payment. Below the Gabo, and it's not to the heavens. Below Chamri, and it's not so severe in his mind. And therefore we have to take it against his will. So okay, Inam, your alternative, another way to look at it like this, another point for the second way is that we really have to take it against his will. Came into Hulo Chata, since he didn't actually sin, Umamonu de Azik, it was still his animal that did the damage and not him. Okay, he's not going to take it so seriously. We should again maybe have to collect against his will. Nachman said to him, slow down. Another question, he says, Shabkan, he says, leave me alone. He says, stop. He says, he says, I'm still immersed in thinking about the first question. I haven't answered to the first question yet before you ask me a second question. Let me answer the first one. Let me answer the first one first. There's another beautiful way for another time to explain this, and he explains that according to the second way, I had an answer to the first question, and according to the second, you ruined my first answer. That's another way, but we'll do that for another time. Okay, Tan Rabbanim. Okay, now we learned in a Bryce. It's a very interesting case. Let's happen. You know that a borrower is responsible, has the most liability of all the watchmen, because he gets all the benefit. Like he's an owner, he has the most responsibility. So let's look at this case. Shalo, a guy borrowed somebody's ox b'cheskas tam. As far as he knew, when he borrowed it, it was a tam, but it wasn't. He thought it was a tam. Okay, the nimtza muad, but the truth is, it turned out that it was false. Pretense is right. It was really a muad. And what happened? Okay, and it did damage. Okay, as a muad. Okay, what's the halacha? So the owners have to pay half damages. Okay, because they never let the guy know that it was a worn ox. And the shoal who thought he was getting an unworn ox pays what he was responsible for an unworn ox. He accepted unworn ox. He pays for an unworn ox, and the owner has to pay the other half for not telling him. First, but listen to the second case. The first case seems simple. He didn't tell him. He has to be responsible for that half. Who had the base show? But no, let's say what? While the borrower had it, it gored one time, 2 times, 3 times, and then he gave and then he gave it back to the owners. The owners pay half damages, and the borrower is not responsible at all. Sounds like what we discussed before, that when you change ownership, it changes, right? It undoes the status quo. Okay, but we're gonna have a problem with it in a minute. Okay, Amar Man. Let's analyze this price. You told me if he borrowed it thinking with the correct assumption that it was unworn, but it turned out it was false and it was really a worn ox. The owner is going to pay half for not telling him. And the borrower has to pay half because he had to watch an unworn ox anyway. He had to pay half damages. All right. Why should the borrower pay even half? What do you mean? Why he thought he borrowed an unworn ox? Why shouldn't he pay half? He says, because I'll say to him, listen, I borrowed an ox. I didn't borrow a lion. If I had known that this ox gored even once, it's still even a tom ox that gored once is different than an ox I didn't think he gored at all. I would have been more careful. Yeah, I would have been much more careful. I don't know how to damage her here. Amarav, he said, you know what? Now this whole list of questions is all one list. They could have asked everything in one shot, but he's going to ask them one after the other. But everything could have been asked originally. Why on earth should this guy pay half damages? One, he says, listen, I never thought that this thing was going to damage at all. You're right, but even though I know it's an unworn ox, I always have to watch it. But there's a difference between ox that gored even once. Okay, it's gored even once. I'll tell you why. Okay, sure enough. He knew when we said he thought it was an unworn ox, he thought it was an unworn ox, but it was an ox that had gored once or twice. He knew that it already had a history of goring, even though it wasn't a worn ox, but it was not so okay. But even so, even if he knew gored once or twice, let him say to him, Tam Shili Muadlishi. Okay, listen, still, but he says by a borrowed an unwatched ox, unwarned ox, and not a warned ox. Okay, you still fooled me, and since you fooled me, you cheated me, and you have to pay. It's all false pretenses. He says no, Mishum. He says no. Even so, you have to pay. Why? Mishum Damar. He says even though I didn't tell you. So itama, because the fact that you can't, it's inescapable. Even if it was absolutely it was a tam and not a muad, palganiska boy shalomi, you still would have had to pay half damages. What's the difference? Hashanam is palganiska. Okay, he said, what's the difference? Okay, you still would have had to pay half the you pay also the half. You'll pay pay half damages. Ivan namely still. So what? Even so, why should the borrower have to pay half damages? Let him say, it was a time I only would have been liable from the body of the ox, because as you know, that's the rule of any tom. And now that it's muad, I have to pay for my general estate. I'm obligated much more than the ox. The ox, I have to pay more. More. I have to pay. You have to pay for the general estate. Mishum Damali says no. So what? He says so. Who cares? He said, what's the difference? Let's say it had been collected out of the body of the ox. No, you would have owed me the full ox. Let's say you'll get the benefit of the ox. They'll take it out. They'll literally take it out of the body of the ox. You still have to return my ox to me. What do you care? What's the difference? You're gonna pay if the ox is worth 100, you're gonna pay me back 100 no matter what. The money's gonna be the same. You owe me an ox. You always have to pay it back. What's the difference? Even if I'd let you take it out of the body of the ox, you still owe me an ox. What's the difference? You have to pay me. Okay, Ivan Emily, let him say to him, okay, but so what? I still shouldn't pay. Im Tam, he says, having Medina Machtrina. I said, 1 second. But we know, according to the opinion, that half damages are a fine. He says, I would have run quickly to the basin and as a Tom, and I would have admitted and been exempt from the half damages. Okay, now I can't. Even according to the other opinion, it's a monetary payment, and admitting is not going to help you. Namely, still also the borrower could say to him, "Itam," who he says, had it been truly a Tom, have you agma? I would have sent it out to the swamp, and nobody would able to collect. Okay, because he pays from the body. Okay, so why should I pay? Okay, now you've taken away my ability to do a subterfuge. Let them go look for the ox. Let them till they find it. And he says what? He says this is the case. You're right. What happened was whether through the owner, etc., but they already took possession of the ox. The basin already grabbed it. Why? Because there's no place. Yeah, because there's no place there's no place else to collect it from. He says, "Yihachi, 1 second." He says, if that's true, that the basin already got it. Now explain to me why the borrower has no more excuses. But now I got a new question. Why should the original owner pay half damages even for misleading him? Namely, let the owner say to the borrower, you caused my ox to be taken possession of by somebody I can't do any. I can't argue with them. Okay, I can argue. Yeah, I can't. There's nothing like. Okay, since I can't have any argument against them. Okay, I have nothing I can do. Okay, he says no. He says no. It's not my fault. He says Mishum Damalei. He says to him, let's say I'd given it back to you. Love me. If you didn't have what else to pay, they would have taken it from you anyway. It's still nothing. You're right. No, I let it get taken by the basin. But even if I gave it back to you, the basin would have taken it from you. So everybody has no excuses. All right, one more. Let's try again. The name still let the lender still exempt himself again. That's another way. He shouldn't have to pay us out. Said had given back to me. I would have sent it out. I would have sent it out to the swamp to the hide. Okay, and I wouldn't have paid anything. Okay, okay. Why? Because because he has nothing else. It's a case where he has nothing else to pay with. There's not a din in paying for the body. Yeah, remember that's what I mean. This is a case where he has nothing else to pay with. Otherwise, there's no argument. No. It's a muad. It's a muad. I said that. So I mentioned you before. This whole last section is where he has nothing else to pay with. So that's why they're what's the word? That's why they're what's the word? Yeah, confiscate. That's why they're confiscating his ox. He has nothing to pay with. He said, "What's the difference? You would have hidden it. If I would have given it to you, he says, what's the difference? He says, even if you sent it out to the valley, okay. So what? We should normally so but still, you would own the money anyway. It doesn't make a difference. You own the money from your estate one way or another. So he says, what? So now, so I preempted a little bit. I preempted a little bit. It's what I true said in the end. What I said was true in the end, but you have to get there. So 1 second. That's good if Wadi can take them back. Yeah, they would have collected them. That's where we had other possessions. Okay, less than he has no other possession. Michael and Boy's going to say, he says to him, no. Even when he had no other possessions, he says, and you got the base again. I would have hidden it. I wouldn't have to pay it all. Why? He says, what are you talking about still? The same way, that right, that I am obligated to you, you are obligated to them. And we're going to see what there's a famous principle. What does that mean? If Mr. A owes Mr. B money and Mr. B owes Mr. C money, it's as if Mr. A owes Mr. C. And C can collect directly from A. So he says, listen, he says, I'm obligated to you and you're obligated to him. So he can collect directly what from me? What's the difference? He says, okay. Okay, no, therefore what? Just like I'm obligated to you to give it back to you, you are obligated to give it back to the damagee that you're obligated to, and therefore what? And I cannot let you, okay, get rid of it. It has to go from me to him. Rav Nassan, why? Because like we learned Rav Nassan, the Tanya, Rav Nassan Omer. If one person, that's in English, the word is dunning. One person is duns another person. Knows has a right to collect the debt from his friend, mana for 100. And the friend that he's dunning duns his other friend for what? For 100. How do we know that we take it from the third one and give it to the first one? Talmud Lomer, we say, the language of the pasuk is you give it to the one, even though it usually means that he did wrong, means here you give it to the one who owns that obligate, who owns it, okay, and therefore what? So you give it back to the original person, to the first creditor, and therefore what? I didn't do anything to you. Tough luck. Okay, therefore we finally defended why the borrower can't get out of paying his half, and why the lender can't get out of paying his half. But we learned in the Brisa something I mentioned earlier, which is self-contradictory. We said, who ad bebeis a shoel. We said, if the ox, in the end of the Brisa, we said, if the ox became warned in the house of the borrower, he gave it back to the original owners, to the lender, if it did damage after that, back in the hand of the lender, it goes back and he pays half damages. And the borrower is completely exempt. Now, wait a second. Seifa Rishus Mashana. So clearly that ending part of the Brisa is clearly holding what? That changing the ownership undoes the status quo, and it reverts to what? To being innocent, to being an unwarned ox. Resha, 1 second, but I said 1 second, but the beginning doesn't make any, but it's not going to make any sense. Why is that? Why? Because we learned in the Rishus Eina Mashana, but we said 1 second, the first part of the Brisa it was clear that changing ownership doesn't change anything. Why? Because you told me what was the case. It was where a muad ox was given to the unwitting borrower, and now it has to pay full damages. Why? If it went from the lender to the borrower, it went back to being an on, even if he cheated him. But still, what? It should be a tom. So yeah, how can this? So the first part holds what? Changing. The first opening holds what? That changing ownership does not change the status quo. Okay, it does not change the chazaka. And the second part says changing does change the status quo. What is he going to do?
It's very similar today. Like we go to rent a car, and the like Hertz or Abe, whether they give you a car that's defective.
Yeah.
And they know about it.
Yeah. Yes.
The car didn't know anything.
Yeah. Read those papers when you get those rent a cars. You have to read the fine print.
Then you'll never take the car. You'll never be able to drive. You spend all the car.
Start them in a novel.
Yeah, you'll never get out of it. It's true. So obviously, there was a contradiction. So this is the answer we hate to give. We say Amar Rav Yochanan. We say what Tavra. You're right. This is an unreconcilable self-contradiction. I'm forced to say what we hate to say. Misha Shana Zu, that the one who taught the beginning, Lo Shana Zu didn't teach the end. That's an answer we never want to give, but sometimes we have to. We have to give it. Yeah, yeah, we do it. Yeah, we do it. Well, when it rains, it pours. Rabba says what? He says, no, I can solve it. Don't give in so quickly. We can solve the contradiction in the Brisa. He says, okay, since the beginning, when the lender gave it to the borrower, we asserted that what? That the change of ownership doesn't do anything. Seifa nami then also in the Seifa, the real truth is, even though it looked like that when it was given from the borrower to the lender, that the change of ownership made it revert to an unwarned ox, but safe behind a time. But here's the reason. Really, the truth is that the change of ownership did not make a change. Mishum Amalei, the real reason why, the real reason why it's the owners say to the borrower, okay, since it was warned by you, lav kol kaminach dimiyadis le'leturai. You have no right to change the status quo of my ox into a warned ox. You have no right to do it. Okay, you can't cause it to be a muad, and therefore what? And therefore it remains in the status quo of what? Of an unwarned ox. Nobody else can do that job, and there's all kinds of reasons why we would say such a thing. Okay, but he says you have no right. You can't. It's not. Therefore, what the point is like this. It's not. No, it's that. Just to explain. In other words, yeah. One second. No, when can it change in the status quo of the owner, but it can't change in the status quo of somebody else, right? Yeah, and therefore what? Okay, and Rav Papa says the other way. Listen, beautiful. He says, "Mida seifa rishus mashana." Let's do the other way. I'm going to line it, but in the reverse order. Since the end really held that what? That the changing of domain changed the status quo. Okay, reisha nami rishus mashana. Also, what? Also, in the beginning, you have to say that it changed. What do you mean it didn't change? No, you went from the lender to the borrower, and you still called it warned. The reisha at a time, and the reisha. What's the reason why that it remained, even though it should have changed? Because you can never remove the fact that the owner, even when a guy lends something, right? When a guy lends something, he doesn't cease to be the owner. You're right; it's physically in somebody else's domain and responsibility, but he doesn't cease to be the owner. And therefore, what lending is not really considered to be what is not really considered to be a change of ownership. Okay, Sharet Stadin. Okay, we have a famous. We learned earlier. Okay, in our Mishnah that a stadium ox. Okay, enachai miso. Even though it's a muad and it killed somebody, we don't kill it. Why? Because we said what it has to be an ox.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Why? We don't kill the ox. Okay. Why? Because we say it's an ox that killed an ox that they made to kill, that they forced to kill. Yeah, he made him kill. Ibailu. So they had this question. Lagabi Mizbeach, what's the rule when it comes to a sacrifice? Okay. In other words, can we this stadium ox that we forced to kill? Okay, can it be given as a sacrifice or can it not? You're going to see in a minute why. Rav Amar Kasher, Rav says, yeah, it's good enough. We don't kill it, and it's good. You can give it as a sacrifice. Well, Shmuel says no. Even though we don't kill it, you can't give it as a sacrifice. Rav Amar Kasher, Rav said it's a kosher sacrifice. Understood why? Because he didn't really. The ox is not. This is not a sinful ox, so to speak. It was under duress. And that's an ox. It's not disqualified from a sacrifice. So Shmuel says no. It's disqualified. Hari not. And still a sin was done with it. It killed somebody. I don't care whether it meant it or not. You can't bring a sacrifice for something that's a killer. Macy Bay. Now the Gemara is going to ask a kasha to Shmuel. I want to prove to you, Shmuel, that an ox that's not killed is also not disqualified for what? That's also not disqualified for the mizbeach. If it's exempt from being killed for killing, it's also not disqualified from the mizbeach. Why? Okay, Macy. Okay, I'm going to answer the question. He brings. We learn. We have to be careful here. There's a pasuk when it comes to the karbanos. It says, "Adam kiyaku became carbon Hashem." If a person among you will sacrifice to Hashem, and then it says min habak or min atzon from the cattle, from the sheep, etc. So we're going to explain all these things. Now you have to know one thing: min in the Torah is an exclusion. I say min from, some yes and some no. And you have to know, you should know, by the way, there are Bali Musar, from whom I hope, I come, ostensibly anyway. But from the Bali Musar, a lot of them in Yiddish, a lot of people would say to each other as a bracha, they would say, oh, nachas from the kinder. You should have nachas from your children. So some of the Bali Musar would never say it. Why? Because since in the Torah, when it says min atzon, it says what? Some yes and some no. Min abakar, some yes and some no. So if your person would say to a person, nachas from the kinder, they're really saying, some of your kids should give you nachas and some not. So they didn't want to say it. So they used to say what? They used to say each child should give you nachas, for example, rather than say nachas. They don't want to say nachas from the kinder because they're telling the guy some yes, some no. Over here, so let's take a look. Now, watch, with all this, we're going to ask a kasha to Shmuel. Well, I'm going to show you from the Bryce. We learn mina behema. What do you mean from the behemoths, from the cattle, from the behemoths? Lahotzi yesa rabeya. that excludes what? That what? You cannot sacrifice an animal that lived with a person, that came upon a person. Okay? Okay, what does it mean? Okay, and also excludes what? Also excludes an animal that was lived with by a human. No, it's an animal, a male that came upon a human, or a female that was come upon by a human. Okay, mina bakar. What do you mean? What are we excluding from the bakar? Lahotzias and nebat. That excludes you're not allowed to bring a sacrifice from something that was worshipped for avodah zarah. Minatzon. What is that coming to exclude? Samson. Lahotzias and mukta. And that's to say that anything that was designated for idol worship also can't be brought as a sacrifice. Okay, uminatzon. Okay, what is minatzon? Now, minatzon and the vav. Minatzon we already did. The extra vav. What does that come to exclude? Lahotzias and nogeach. That's to tell me what? That if an animal gored and killed a man, okay, that you can't bring it as a sacrifice. You can't that you can that you can't bring it as a sacrifice. Okay, Amrav Shimon. Okay, im nemar roveya. So then Rav Shimon says, 1 second. Hey, you want to tell me what? That you can't bring the animal? He says, im nemar roveya loma nemar nogech. If you told me what? That the animal that came upon a human, okay, is disqualified. Lama nemar nogech. Why do you have to tell me that the one that gored is no good? Okay, and it's one. And both of them, if they're witnesses, they have to be killed. If they're witnesses, they're both animals that have to be killed. An animal that came upon a human has to be killed. An animal that killed a human, if it was more, it has to be killed. Okay, why'd you say that? If you told me the one that gored can't be a sacrifice, why'd you tell me the one that came upon a human? Okay, the answer is why. Why'd you have to teach me both? Sorry, I introduced it wrong. Because there's some aspect of the animal that came upon a human which is different, that has a chumrah over one that gored. And there's a chumrah, there's a stringency by a gorer that there isn't by the animal that lived with a human. Ravea also about honest karatzim. When it came to animal that living with a human, we don't care, okay, whether it was active and it did it purposely, or whether it was done or if it was done against its will. No, it's even the animal that was lived with by a human, which was against its will. Okay, the human came upon the animal, is no difference, but it's the same. So there, whether it was active or passive, so to speak, okay, it's will or against its will, you can't bring a sacrifice. Okay, no geach also. When it came to the goring animal, we did not equate what a purposely goring animal to one that was against its will. Okay, we just bingo, you just got it. Okay, so you see you see that it's not exempted. Okay, we're gonna see in a second. We're gonna try and say that. No geach mashan kofer. And furthermore, what we said, let's go the other way. How are we gonna see how a gorer is more severe? Because a gorer has to pay the atonement money. But Ravena mashan kofer, and an animal that lives, an animal that lives with a human doesn't have to pay any kofar. Okay, even though the person's gonna get killed. Okay, therefore, since there was a stringency in each of them, you had to say the gore, and you had to say the liver with and the gore. Okay, katani mias, but at all events here, what was the upshot? Well, they also owners corrupt. So you see that when it came to animal live with humans, we made no difference whether it was against its will or with its will. But we said by a gorer, we did not equate against its will with its will. So what was the halacha? Lav the carbon, isn't that the point that when it gored against its will, that we don't disqualify it, it's still good for a carbon. After all that, take a deep breath. Kasha to Shmuel. Okay, the Gemara says no. He says lo. He says liktala. He says what? He says no. It's only saying this, that we don't equate them, that if it gored against its will, like we said, it doesn't get killed. But it's still what Shmuel said, but it's still disqualified for the sacrifice. And it really makes sense that it was only as far as killing that we differentiate. Why? The carbon, because you want to say what? If you want to say that even for a sacrifice, it's not disqualified. No geach lo also ba'onus karatzon. Okay, he says, how could the Brisa say that when it came to a gorer, we did not equate against its will to its will? Okay, lav honesty they exceed, lav ratzon they exceed. It never spoke about it doing any action. It just says from its own. It never talks about will or not will. Okay, elav. So you have to say it has to mean what liktala. It has to be talking about what Killing, why? Because there the pasuk does say ki yigach. The pasuk by goring, pardon me, says when it gores. He's when it gores, not when you made it gore. You see, but it can't be, but it can't be, but you can't say when because you can't say what. Uh, um,
That it's useful.
we, yeah, one thing I just want to see one thing. Right when it came to goring, um, it just said minas. The pasuk didn't make the difference, right? That's the point. Okay. Both have a wonderful day. If I mess that spot up, you have to. Great. Thanks.
You got a chance to talk to your son?
I did not, but I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what.
Almost 9:30.
I'll tell you what.
So we finished. What our plan was, just go home and have a.
You know.
No, we finished 20 to 9. We finished.
I mean, 49.
Yeah, then we finished.
And tomorrow be
They went back for Thanksgiving and Hanukkah, and they'll be coming back. Yeah, as far as I know, that was their plan. And then I'm a little surprised. Chaim Reese was back. He was a participant usually, so it may be that they just got back from Israel. So somebody else was a participant last. They haven't come down yet. I got a message from them. Oh yeah, I didn't know. Well, I'm glad to hear that was the reason. Yeah, a good reason. When did you get up? Yes, but give me a minute or two to get my act together. Okay, Ruben? Yeah, I read. Don't forget your sweatshirt. Sorry out there. Thank you. You'll notice it soon as you go out. It was up there before, yeah. How was you? He just got here. Unless you guys are delivering our refrigerator packs. Yeah.